Hello and good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Captain speaking, and welcome to We Educate Racing. In this video, we're going to go over how to tune for aerodynamics in Gran Turismo 7. But before we get into it, I just want to make sure you guys have seen the suspension settings video. I will have them linked in the description below. But this is just so that you guys would be caught up to how we got these values here. But also, everything we mentioned in this video would make sense. Alright? With all that being said, it's lights out and away we go. Before we get into downforce, I just want to make sure that you guys understand we're not going to go over aerodynamics. If you want to talk about that or learn more about that, just Google it or go on YouTube. It'll explain everything about aerodynamics. Fine. But we're only going to talk about how to tune downforce in Gran Turismo 7. Okay? So I'm going to try to keep it relevant, is the idea. Alright. And then one more thing before we continue. In the natural frequency video, I mentioned three constants. Values that do not change. I mean, they fluctuate, but they always revert back to these values. The reason why we need these three constants is it's how we build our foundation for the entire suspension setup. Those three constants are the weight ratio. As we hit the brakes and accelerate, the weight shifts to the front and the rear, but it always reverts back to these values. Okay, that's one. Constant number two is the front ride height. The rear doesn't matter because we can always adjust this to increase rear inertia or rear end oversteer. Okay, but once we set our front, then that is like the base for the entire suspension tree, if you will. Okay, this is the root, if you will. Okay, so yeah, this is number two, and there's no particular order. There's just, yeah, three of them. Okay, and obviously the last one is downforce. The faster we go, the strength of this kicks in. But we need to make sure that these are balanced, so that as during slow corners, we're relying on mechanical grip, how the car behaves with this setup. Okay, once we go through mid-speed corners and higher, we want the car to behave just like this. If our downforce is set up unbalanced, then this changes, which is not good. It becomes inconsistent, not good. We want to make sure that no matter how fast we're going through corners, it will always feel like this. And downforce plays a big role. Okay, so yeah, the three constants. Okay, so downforce. Okay, basically, before we even talk about how to tune this, you need to understand one thing. The surface area of the rear wing is much bigger than the front splitter. Okay, the downforce from the front is coming from the splitter, and then obviously the rear is from the rear wing. Okay, why is that important? Because if you set the values the same, say for instance, set this to 160, set this to 160, this is not balanced. You have way too much downforce on the front than you do the rear, even though these values read the same. It's only because of the surface area. Okay, the front splitter contributes 40% of the total front downforce. The hood and the windshield also play a part in the total front downforce. Now, when I say 40, 30, 30, those are rough estimates. It's just like a give or take, whatever. Reason is because every car is different, like the hood, the angle of the windshield, and etc. They're all different, so you have to also consider the face of the car when tuning for front downforce. Okay, so there's no real right or wrong, but just keep in mind. Watch the aerodynamics video on YouTube or Google it, and then you'll better understand how aerodynamics work. That's why the shape of a car has to be taken into consideration when tuning for front downforce. Okay, so 40%, which means, say for instance, this is on a 100 scale. It is on a 100 scale, and then we'll set this to 100. Let's just assume that that's 40, whatever. no big deal. It is 40, whatever. That means setting this would uh, would make this 0, so 40%. Okay, this technically is balanced. The amount of downforce hitting the air in the front is the same hitting the rear. But because of the surface area, this is, yeah. Okay, so, but in my history of tuning cars, roughly 7 years now, well, for this game, it's been 7 years since sport. But even so, I've been tuning since Gran Turismo 2, Forza 1. I found that 10 more points to the rear has a greater effect, but doesn't change the front. Like it's fine. You can set it like that and it works out great. When I tune my cars, this is how I set my aero if it's applicable. Reason is because I'm relying solely on mechanical grip and the tires. When I go through mid-speed corners, if the car still is sliding around, then my downforce is too low and or I'm not going fast enough. Yes, in some cases, you just need to go just that much faster and the downforce is going to work. You just have to trust that it's going to work. And that's on some corners. But that's a topic for another conversation, another video. The reason why I would set my values to at least minimum, not like this. This is unbalanced. This is not minimum. This is unbalanced. Incorrect. 40% of the front total downforce. Okay. Is because, again, the higher this value means lower top end and slower acceleration. I don't want to lose those values. Say, for example, here. Acceleration performance, right? If I'm to increase this value, we're losing top speed. We're losing acceleration. Not good. I mean, these values also mean like in terms of lateral grip. Yeah. It's good. But we're losing acceleration. We're gaining performance points, but it's referring to how it handles in corners, which is the idea. But we also don't want to lose this. Okay? Rotational and all of that, it's coming from mechanical grip. So we can just leave that set to its minimum. This is personal preference. Keep that in mind. So in some cases, you might want to have more because there's a specific driving technique that allows you to use lower aerodynamics and or if absolutely no aerodynamics. But that comes down to the driver. Okay. I don't want to get too into it, but basically what happens is as we corner, this particular driver can feel when the tire is about to lose traction. He can feel it, either through his seat or through the wheel. Yeah, but as soon as he feels it, he knows just how much to counter steer before the rear end even slides out. So that's like an advanced style of driving that takes practice and years to learn. I can kind of sort of do it. It's kind of fun once you do it. It's like you're almost drifting in a way, but not. It's really weird. Yeah. You can even say that it's like driving the car with the rear wheels, but that's a whole nother subject for another video. Okay. So yeah, anyway, again, just keep these to a minimum. Keep them balanced. Consider the front. Say for instance, like we're gonna use the McLaren F1 GTR or whatever, the old one. The face of that looks like an entire wing. Okay, that means you do not need to set this value that high because the face itself is a wing already. Let's say it contributes 50% of the front front wing, or 60% of the front wing, so, or 70% of the front wing. So you just set this down to 30 points or whatever. Okay, so yeah. Oh, okay, one more thing. uh as the foundations, the three constants that we have here, um, our natural frequency, the first one, the one that we should start from, is how is why these values are set up that this way. The weight balance, the front ride height. Okay, so the natural frequency springs needs to be strong enough to support these values, right? But also strong enough to make sure that it does not bottom out. And also, the faster we go, the stronger this feels. The more weight is added to the car. But because these values are set to its minimum, we don't necessarily need to increase our natural frequency. If you, as the driver, want, say, 10 more points to your downforce overall, that means you need to increase your natural frequency as well. Not necessarily by 10 points, that's completely up to you, but the idea is to make sure that the car does not bottom out at top speeds. Okay? We set our values to its minimum, so we don't necessarily need to worry about it. But because you, as a driver, want more downforce, but your ride height is still 85, you don't, or whatever this value is, depending on the car. But whatever this is, you just want to make sure you do not bottom out. All right. Let's see. For the rear, it doesn't technically matter because in some cases, you have a rake. Oh, speaking of rakes, okay, rake means that the rear end is higher. Okay, when the rear end is higher, it also acts like a spoiler. So the higher your rake is, which can also mean you can lower your rear wing value. Yeah, it doesn't have to be too extreme. So like if you add 10 points here, that doesn't mean you can reduce downforce by 10. No, maybe one will suffice for the total downforce for the rear end, because the entire car also acts as a rear wing. The whole car in total acts like a rear wing. The face acts like the front, but the whole car acts like a rear wing. If you have a rake, you're also activating ground effects. The more rake you have, the more ground effect kicks in. What ground effect is all right. I see. I didn't want to get into aerodynamics, but I guess we have to. So basically, you have air on top of the car, right? Well, obviously, there's more air on top than there is below. However, as the air exits from under the car, they need to equalize. So say for instance you have 100 points of air on top of the car and you only have 10 points underneath. You need to have 90 points of air exiting the back to equalize. Otherwise you get drag. There's like a vacuum generated in the back. In order to get the 90 from the 10, it needs to come from somewhere. And since you cannot have enough air underneath the front because of your splitter already, it sucks it from the sides. The higher this value is, the bigger the pocket for air to seep in from the side of the car. Okay, when that happens, the air gets sucked down, or the rear end gets sucked down from all this air coming in from the side. That's called the Venturi effect. And you could go and Google what Venturi effect is in correlation to cars. So you guys will better understand how that works. So in a way, this is great. Okay, but this requires a specific driving style. If you're going to have this much inertia in the rear, then you need to counter that by setting a really high front anti-roll bar, for understeer, because this is heavy on oversteer. You have a lot of oversteer on this, so you're gonna need to set this like like this maybe, so that the front end understeers so much to countersteer or to counteract the excessive rear end oversteer. But the benefit of this is you get your aerodynamic. You're relying on ground effects to keep the car stuck down to the ground. So like you can go faster through corners because you're allowing downforce or Venturi effect to suck the car down. But this requires a crazy level of driving style. If you have not caught on yet, this is like Max Verstappen's preferred driving style, where the rear end is doing all the work for him, and he just keeps the front end planted. So and then he can go through corners so much quicker, right? But that requires a different level of driving style that is not technically taught for the average racer, because not every car is tuned that way. Every majority of race cars are tuned for balance. Where did we have these at? Yeah. See, I could always revert back to these because this is how I always start my tunes. Okay. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much covers everything in terms of how to tune downforce in Gran Turismo 7. If I miss anything, please write it in the comment section. Yeah, so I went over the front, we went over the rear. If you wanted to go heavy, one more thing before we close. If you wanted to go maximum downforce, let's say you're on a racetrack that doesn't have a lot of high-speed corners or high-speed straights. You just a lot of corners. It's a small track. All right. You make sure that the 40% that's contributing for the front, all right, is considered. So the rear end cannot exceed 60%. If you're gonna put 100% of the front and it's only contributing 40%, then you need 60% for the rear to balance that out. If that makes any sense. I hope I didn't lose you there. Do not set this to maximum because now the rear still has more than the front. Okay, so yeah, keep it balanced. All right, balanced is number 1, and then keep it to a minimum is 2. But then the higher you go is totally up to you as the driver. And again, if you have this set to maximum, then you would have to increase your natural frequency because you're gonna bottom out. Let me set this to 85. I mean, at 85, you're not going to bottom out. But again, this is set up because we're going to change this when we take the car out on track. Okay, but when we finish, this is going to be about 4 points to 4 points above minimum, because I found that this is the lowest setting you can have before the wheels hit the wheel wells on an average track. If the track say has a lot of dips like Bathurst for instance, then yeah, we're gonna increase this. We need to. we're gonna hit the wheel well and the car doesn't turn. It's really funny. There was this one car where it got stuck. Like the wheel went up into the wheel well and wouldn't come back down, and so my car kept turning. Even though I was trying to turn the wheel back, it wouldn't turn. I had to hit a bump to get the wheel back down. It was really weird. I wish I recorded it. Okay, maybe that will be it for another video. Type down wheel wells if you want to see that that video. Okay, okay, that's pretty much it, guys. In the next video, if you have not subscribed yet, I recommend you do that because we're gonna go over differentials. Very, 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 very important to tune this a specific way to complement all of these, but technically you can get away without. No, who am I kidding? You need the differentials. I don't care who you are. If you were to purchase a car, any car, at least purchase the fully customizable suspension and fully customized diffs. These are the only 2 that you need. Everything else, whatever. Also, in future videos, I need to go over these upgradable parts. There are certain parts that need to be installed Just because you have the best part, that technically doesn't mean it's a good thing. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, but we'll go over that in future videos. Again, if you don't, just make sure you guys are subscribed so you don't miss out on that. It's very important. Not a lot of people talk about it. Not a lot of people think about it. But I have. It plays a big role in terms of tuning, with the parts that you install. Okay? So, right. Until the next one, guys. Talk soon. Bye-bye.